You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Marcus Aurelius, you have spent too many years running after approval, after success, after the illusion that if you could just prove yourself enough times, the world would finally declare you worthy. But the chase never ends, does it? Each achievement only reveals another mountain to climb. Each victory feels hollow, and you begin to suspect that the game itself is rigged against you. This is where your journey toward true power begins, not when you finally win, but when you stop playing games designed by others. The weakness you feel is not a character flaw. It is information. It tells you that you have been operating from a borrowed script, following rules written by men who never lived your life or faced your struggles. That trembling in your chest when you speak your truth is not cowardice. It is your authentic self struggling to emerge from beneath years of careful performance. You have been so busy becoming what others expected that you forgot to ask what you actually wanted. This forgetting is not accidental. Society depends on your confusion about your own desires because clear men are dangerous men. They cannot be controlled through shame or manipulated through fear because they know what they stand for. Consider how Nietzsche spoke of the courage to become who you are. This is not about discovering some hidden essence waiting to be unveiled. It is about the harder work of creation, choosing who you will be when no one is watching, when there are no rewards for your choices, when the only audience is your own conscience. The man you are becoming exists not in your dreams, but in your daily decisions to honor what matters to you, even when it costs you something. Every time you choose authenticity over acceptance, you strengthen this emerging self. Every time you choose comfort over growth, you feed the old patterns that have kept you small. The chaos you feel is not your enemy. It is the natural state of a life in transition. When you stop chasing external validation, when you withdraw your energy from the endless pursuit of more, you create a void. This emptiness terrifies most men because they mistake it for failure. But this space is where your actual power begins to grow. Like a cleared field before planting, this apparent nothingness is pregnant with possibility. The discomfort you feel in this emptiness is not a sign that something is wrong. It is a sign that something is finally right. You are learning to be comfortable with yourself without distraction, without the constant noise of other people's expectations. You will encounter guilt. Society has invested heavily in your compliance, and when you begin to prioritize your own judgment over collective opinion, you will feel like you are betraying something sacred. This guilt is the last grasp of a dying way of being. It will tell you that choosing yourself is selfish, that real men sacrifice everything for others, that your desires are somehow less valid than everyone else's needs. This voice has kept you small for years. It is time to stop listening. The guilt you feel is not your conscience speaking. It is the internalized voice of every person who benefited from your self-neglect. Your mother who wanted you compliant, your teachers who wanted you obedient, your employers who wanted you grateful for less than you deserved. The path forward requires discipline, but not the kind you have been taught. Not the grinding, punishing discipline of the martyr who proves his worth through suffering. The discipline you need is quieter, more focused. The daily practice of choosing what serves your growth over what provides immediate comfort. This means saying no to opportunities that drain your energy, even if they pay well. It means disappointing people who have grown comfortable with your endless availability. It means trusting your instincts even when you cannot explain them to others. This new discipline is not about forcing yourself to do things you hate. It is about training yourself to recognize what truly nourishes you and having the courage to choose it consistently. As Jung understood, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But this becoming is not a passive process. It requires you to face the parts of yourself you have tried to hide, the anger you were taught to suppress, the desires you were told were inappropriate, the dreams you dismissed as unrealistic. These shadow elements contain enormous energy you have been using to maintain an acceptable facade. When you stop fighting these aspects of yourself and learn to integrate them, you discover resources you never knew you possessed. Your anger, properly channeled, becomes fierce protectiveness for what you value. Your desires, honestly acknowledged, become a compass pointing toward your true path. Your dreams, no matter how unrealistic they seem to others, contain the seeds of your unique contribution to the world. Real power is not about domination. It is about presence. It is the gravitational pull of a man who knows his own worth and does not need to prove it to anyone. When you operate from this center, people sense something different about you. They cannot manipulate you as easily because you are not desperate for their approval. They cannot control you through shame because you have made peace with your imperfections. This is not arrogance, it is the quiet confidence of someone who has stopped apologizing for taking up space. True presence comes from the integration of all your parts, the acceptance of your full humanity, the willingness to be seen as you actually are rather than as others need you to be. You will walk alone more often now. Not because you are antisocial or bitter, but because authentic living requires you to trust your own judgment over the comfort of consensus. Marcus Aurelius knew the solitude well, the isolation that comes from thinking for yourself in a world that rewards conformity. But this aloneness is not punishment. It is the natural consequence of developing your own vision. Most people cannot follow where you are going because they are still committed to paths that lead nowhere. They are still chasing the same illusions you have abandoned, still believing in the same stories you have outgrown. Your solitude is not rejection of others, it is protection of the fragile new growth happening within you. This does not mean becoming hard or cynical. The strongest men you will ever meet carry deep tenderness for life precisely because they understand how fragile and precious it is. But they protect this tenderness with boundaries. They choose carefully where to invest their energy, not because they are selfish, but because they understand that their capacity to contribute to the world depends on their ability to maintain their own strength. The man who gives everything to everyone has nothing left for what truly matters. The man who protects his energy can be genuinely generous when generosity is called for. Responsibility becomes your ultimate freedom. When you accept complete ownership of your life, your reactions, your choices, your circumstances, you stop being a victim of forces beyond your control. This is terrifying at first because it means you can no longer blame your problems on other people or external events. But it is also liberating because it means you have the power to change anything that needs changing. As Epictetus taught, you cannot control what happens to you, but you can control how you respond. This response is where your freedom lives. Every situation becomes an opportunity to practice this freedom, to choose your response rather than simply react from old programming. The world will test your commitment to this new way of being. Old friends will try to pull you back into familiar patterns. Family members will question your decisions. Professional colleagues will wonder why you have become less available, less agreeable, less willing to carry their burdens. These tests are not personal attacks, they are the natural resistance that emerges when one person chooses to change in a system that benefits from his compliance. Your old self served other people's comfort zones. Your new self threatens those same zones by demonstrating that change is possible, that different choices can be made, that the script everyone follows is not mandatory. Your relationship with time changes when you stop chasing. Instead of always rushing towards some future achievement, you learn to inhabit the present moment fully. This is not passive acceptance but active engagement with what is actually happening now, not what you wish were happening or what you fear might happen. This presence becomes a source of power because it allows you to respond to reality rather than to your projections about reality. Most men live in a constant state of mild panic about the future or regret about the past. The man who has learned to be present has access to resources that simply are not available to the chronically distracted mind. The paradox you will discover is that by stopping the chase, by turning your attention inward, by focusing on becoming rather than acquiring, you actually begin to attract what you need. Not through manipulation or strategy, but through the natural magnetism of a man who has found his center. People are drawn to authenticity the way plants turn toward light, not because they understand it intellectually, but because they sense its life-giving quality. When you stop trying to impress others and start expressing your true nature, you discover that the right people have been waiting for you to show up authentically all along. This transformation is not a destination but a process. There will be days when you slip back into old patterns, when the pull of external validation feels stronger than your commitment to internal authority. This is normal. Growth is not linear and setbacks are not failures, they are feedback. Each time you notice yourself chasing again, you can make a new choice to return to your center, to remember who you are becoming, to trust the process even when you cannot see the outcome. The goal is not perfection but awareness, not elimination of all weakness but conscious choice about which weaknesses you will indulge and which you will transform. The man you are becoming does not need the world's permission to exist. He does not require external confirmation of his worth. He knows that his value is inherent, not earned, and that his job is not to prove this to anyone but to live from this truth. This is how you stop chasing and start attracting, not by changing your techniques but by changing your relationship with yourself. When you know who you are, the right people and opportunities find you naturally, not because you have manipulated the outcome, but because you have become the kind of person who naturally draws what serves his highest good. The deepest realization comes when you understand that everything you have been chasing outside yourself already exists within you. The approval you seek from others is available from your own mature judgment. The love you crave from partners flows naturally when you have learned to love yourself fully. The respect you want from the world emerges automatically when you respect your own boundaries and values. The success you pursue in external achievements becomes inevitable when you define success according to your own standards rather than society's metrics. As Lao Tzu understood, the wise man does not attempt anything very big, and thus achieves greatness. Your power does not come from grand gestures or dramatic transformations. It comes from the accumulation of small, daily choices to honor your truth over convenience, to choose growth over comfort, to invest in what matters rather than what pays immediately. These micro-decisions compound over time, creating a life that reflects your actual values rather than your inherited programming. The journey inward is the only journey that matters because it is the only journey that leads to freedom. External circumstances will always be beyond your complete control. Other people will always have their own agendas. The economy will fluctuate, politics will disappoint, and technology will disrupt whatever stability you think you have built. But the man who has learned to source his security from within cannot be destabilized by external turbulence. He bends without breaking because his roots go deep into his own truth. You begin to understand that most of what you called personality was actually strategy, learned behaviors designed to keep you safe in an unsafe world, to keep you loved by people who could not love themselves, to keep you successful in systems that measure the wrong things. As you release these strategies, you discover what lies beneath them, your essential nature, your unique gifts, your particular way of seeing and being in the world. This core self has been waiting patiently for you to stop performing and start being. The relationships in your life will shift as you change. Some will deepen as you bring more authenticity to them. Others will fade as the basis for connection. Your willingness to play roles that no longer serve you disappears. This winnowing process is natural and necessary. The people who stay are the ones who value your growth more than your compliance, who love who you are becoming more than who you used to be. These are your people, and they are worth the loneliness you may feel as you release the relationships that were based on mutual dysfunction. Money and career begin to take their proper place in your life when you stop chasing them for their own sake. You realize that wealth without purpose is empty, that achievement without meaning is hollow, that success without authenticity is a sophisticated form of failure. This does not mean becoming indifferent to material concerns, but it means pursuing them in service of what you actually value rather than what you think you should value. The man who works from purpose rather than desperation finds that abundance flows more naturally because he is not operating from scarcity and fear. Your body changes when you stop chasing. The chronic stress of performance anxiety begins to release. Your shoulders drop, your jaw unclenches, your breathing deepens. You realize how much energy you have been spending on vigilance, on scanning the environment for threats to your image, on maintaining facades that required constant attention. As this energy becomes available for other uses, you discover capacities you had forgotten you possessed. Your intuition sharpens because you are no longer drowning it out with mental noise. Your creativity emerges because you are no longer censoring it through fear of judgment. The concept of failure transforms completely. What you once saw as evidence of your inadequacy becomes data about what works and what does not. What you once experienced as shame becomes curiosity about how to do better next time. What you once feared as proof of your unworthiness becomes feedback about your growth edges. This shift from judgment to curiosity is perhaps the most practical result of your inner work. It allows you to take risks that serve your growth because you are no longer paralyzed by the possibility of making mistakes. You discover that confidence is not the absence of doubt, but the willingness to act despite doubt. The man who waits until he feels completely confident before taking action waits forever because confidence comes from action, not the other way around. You learn to befriend uncertainty, to see it not as a sign of weakness, but as a sign that you are growing beyond your current limits. The discomfort of not knowing becomes exciting rather than terrifying because you understand that it means you are expanding into new territory. Wisdom begins to accumulate not from reading more books or attending more seminars, but from paying attention to your own experience. You notice patterns in your behavior, cycles in your emotions, themes in your challenges. This self-knowledge becomes your guide, more reliable than any external authority because it is based on your actual life rather than someone else's theories. You develop the ability to sense what is true for you in each situation, to distinguish between the voice of fear and the voice of wisdom, to know when to push forward and when to rest. The spiritual dimension of your life awakens naturally as you move deeper into authenticity. This may or may not involve traditional religious practice, but it always involves a growing sense of connection to something larger than your personal concerns. You begin to experience yourself as part of a vast web of relationships that extends beyond human society to include the natural world, the cosmos, the mystery of existence itself. This connection provides a stability that no external achievement can match because it reminds you that your worth is not dependent on your performance but on your participation in the grand experiment of consciousness. Your legacy becomes clear not as something you will leave behind after death, but as something you are creating in each moment through your choices. Every interaction becomes an opportunity to contribute to the healing of the world or to its wounding. Every decision becomes a vote for the kind of reality you want to live in. This awareness brings both gravity and joy to your daily life because you understand that you matter, that your choices ripple out in ways you cannot fully comprehend, that your journey toward authenticity is not just personal development, but a contribution to the collective evolution of human consciousness. The man who has stopped chasing becomes a refuge for others who are tired of running. Without trying to save anyone or change anyone, simply by living from his truth, he gives others permission to consider that they too might be allowed to stop performing, to rest in their own being, to trust their own judgment. This is perhaps the most profound way that personal transformation serves the world. Not through preaching or teaching, but through modeling what it looks like to be a human being who has remembered his own worth. And so the journey continues, not toward some final destination, but into an ever-deepening relationship with your own truth. Each day offers new opportunities to choose authenticity over approval, growth over comfort, presence over performance. The path is not always easy, but it is always worthwhile because it leads to the one thing you have been seeking all along without knowing it. The experience of being fully yourself in a world that has convinced most people that they are not enough as they are. You are enough. You have always been enough. The work is simply to remember this truth and live from it consistently, one choice at a time.